Summer, I'm super excited to have you here. It's been a pleasure following your work for the years that I've been following you around on Instagram. I really admire the things that you put out. And so I'm just excited to have you here, be able to talk with you for a little bit and hear your story and some exciting things that are coming out for you within the next couple months in 2026.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad to have a chance to talk to you. I also love your work, so it's cool to be here. I'm glad that you asked me to talk.
Absolutely. I feel like we're kind of in similar worlds where we're combining illustration with pottery and
Hmm.
kind of hitting on a lot of pop culture themes and kind of like blending that with craft. And I
Yes.
think the way that you're approaching it is really fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, to just like kick us off for anybody who's not familiar with you or your work, can you tell us a story about how you came into ceramics and kind of what you're up to in the world?
Yeah, so I was actually in college when I first started ceramics, and I was mostly focused on painting for most of college. I was like focused on watercolors. But I went to a very tiny community college, and the painting room was next door to the ceramics studio. And I was always hear the loud ruckus of fun that was the ceramic studio compared to the somewhat stuffy and stoic vibe of the painting classes. And I just remember thinking, like, I have to know what they're doing over there. I have to figure that out. It just sounds too fun. I just want to know. So my very last semester, I needed one more studio credit. So I took ceramics one. And it sounds so cheesy, but it truly was like first day in that class, I was like, oh, I have to do this forever. Like there's no other option. I love it so much. And I really did just like dive headfirst after that. I like after I graduated, I stayed and I audited ceramics too. And then I became a studio tech at that studio and stayed there for over a year just working in the studio. So yeah, it was just out of a curiosity thing that I wanted to try it, and I just loved it so much that I knew I would stick with it from that moment on.
That's, I feel like the story of, or a similar thread of a story of a lot of us potters is that initial curiosity. I don't think this is my thing, but I'll try it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I can definitely relate as the difference between a painting studio and a ceramic studio is stark.
Yes, yes, yeah, it is.
Well, how, tell me about post college. You audited the class afterwards and became a studio tech.
Yes, yeah. So I stayed
What's
there
next?
for about a year, and then my husband he graduated college and he got a job in Raleigh before we were in Asheville, North Carolina. So we were in the
Okay.
mountains. We had to move to Raleigh, so I had to find my footing again, as like a lot of us do fresh out of college. I had no studio. I had nowhere to work. So I had to figure that out. So I had a little spare bedroom that I turned into a studio, but of course I had nowhere to fire anything. So I began looking around for pottery stuff in my area. And I actually ended up getting a job working as a studio assistant to two potters in Raleigh, Liz Kelly and Gretchen Quinn. And I did all sorts of things for them. Primarily, I attached handles for Liz. That was most of what I did, like huge batches. She'd throw like 45, 50, 60 mugs, and I would attach handles in a day, just like production work. But I mean, it was super hands-on and it was fun and I loved it. And it felt very like, I don't know, like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do out of college. I work for other potters. Like, it was very cool. So I did that for, I think, about a year. And then at that point, I also started teaching ceramics at two different studios, just like intro to wheel throwing. And in the background, I was making my own work, but kind of like I kind of had a period where I wasn't making a whole lot right out of college. And then I like was slowly ramping up again. But around 2021, I was still a studio assistant to those two potters. I was teaching at two different studios and I was making my own work. And that was a lot. I also started to like really push into content creation on social media at that point because I needed to get my own business off the ground. But so all of that work at that time, I knew like if I go just balls to the wall right now, it will pay off. I just have to do it and just go for it because I knew I wasn't confident to go full time with my own stuff yet. I was not having successful sales. I needed those part-time gigs. So I kept that up until I had some videos do really well at like the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. It was actually TikTok was my first boom. And then I've kind of migrated to Instagram because eventually stuff performed better on Instagram overall. But anyway, originally it was TikTok. And after that boom of success, I had my first fast sellout sale where like everything was gone in 3 minutes. And after that, I ended up like in 2 days, I had a wait list for customs that had like 65 people on it. And I was like, oh, I can't, I can't do this part time. I need to quit all these other side gigs and do this full time now. So I went full time in 2022. I believe it was late 2022 because I did like have to obviously fulfill my obligations and continue, finish teaching classes and that sort of thing. I didn't just leave everybody high and dry. But that like 6 months where I was doing everything at once did really pay off. I just had to like stick with it. But that's kind of eventually how I ended up where I am now, where I make the pop culture designs and it is my full-time gig. And yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think that's really fascinating how potters like create this map for themselves because if correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any published this is how to be a full-time ceramicist book out there, at least not yet.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think so.
and so in a lot of ways we have to find our own paths and like create our own maps. But one of the hopes that I have, especially like for this podcast and other media we produce, is to start documenting these journeys so that we can kind of leave something behind for the people who are trying to do what full-time artists are currently doing.
Hmm.
And I think there's some really cool parts of your story that like play out or could be these milestones that others can look to recreate in their own journeys in their own ways. Can you dive into a little bit more about how like working for another potter and attaching all those handles like prepared you for where you are now or your painting? Like how do these elements like come together in a way that creates you as you are now in a prepared way as a full-time artist?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it was very valuable that Liz and Gretchen both made pretty different work. Liz did a lot of wholesale. And so she was like massive volumes of work was really her thing. Whereas Gretchen made slightly smaller batch work that was a little more like she hand carved her things. Liz did decals. So there was a lot of variety. So I got to see examples of different like business models, like how being a full-time potter didn't just look like one thing. There were different ways to make enough money to support yourself. You could do wholesale or you could choose to never do wholesale, like Gretchen basically never did it. And I got to see their workflow too. Like, how much time did they really spend making? How much time did they spend like website creating and marketing and all of those sorts of things? And what sort of tasks did they hand off to someone like me? What did they do themselves? I think all of that prepared me when I stepped into my own full-time role to just have an idea of what the job would look like, which was very helpful. I think in college you're just taught how to make the work, but you're
Yeah.
not you're not really taught beyond that. And so just to see examples of full-time working artists was also, I mean, it was inspirational too to see like, yeah, they're really doing it. They make good money. And like both of them had a pretty good work-life balance as well,
Hmm.
which is rare with artists. So that
Yeah.
was healthy to see that I saw how they rested during holidays and like gave themselves breaks when they needed it. But yeah, I think just getting the insight into how like a real potter's life was probably the most valuable thing. And as far as the work itself, I think that like I'm a big believer that people should make as much work as they can before they start selling. I just generally don't recommend people take a class and love it and they're like, I'm going to sell pottery now and sell like the first handful of things that they've made. So I think that like I really loved the idea that I got, super good at attaching handles. It was like I could attach a handle in, like less than 2 minutes and like was very proud of that, and it felt very like, okay, I just liked having some production knowledge even though I was never a production thrower or anything. It was just like, okay, I feel confident in my skills. It definitely paid off in my own work where I don't attach my own handles that fast, but that it definitely sped up my own work times for sure. And you get to learn like how to streamline your movements so that you're not wasting time and effort doing things you don't need to do, like, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the most valuable thing was just seeing how they work.
I love how you said that it like doing those repetitions of adding those handles like helped build your confidence. Do you feel like that's where a lot of new potters kind of get stuck is not having done the reps to build the confidence they feel like they need to then go and do this like sell or work or put themselves out there?
Yeah, I think so. I think that like I heard something somewhere once that was the sign of a true artist isn't if you can like make something great, it's if you can make something great repeatedly. Like if you can just like if you can't replicate something you've done, that you're not where you can be skill level wise. So, yes, I think that repetition of being like, you can make a mug that you love, but can you make 10 of them and like successfully love all of them and they're all the same quality level, that sort of thing. So I do think there's something to be said for like new potters need that repetition. They need that like just make a volume of work. If you make 100 mugs, even if half of them are terrible, you're going to be better than the student who made 50 mugs. Like it just is the way it is, that repetition. I mean, so much of pottery, I think, is muscle memory anyway, that it just makes sense that repetition builds confidence and skill because it builds that muscle memory.
I couldn't agree more. Have you heard the story? And I don't know if this is like a parable that's kind of floated around of the pottery instructor who had two groups of students. And he told one, your job this semester is to make the best pot you can. And he told the other group, your goal is to make as many pots as you can. And then by the end of the class, we'll come back and judge. And it turns out the people who made the more ended up making the better pots because they had the repetitions versus the group that tried to make the best might have only made a few,
Hmm.
and they ended up like they weren't that great because they spent all their time on like the perfect, like trying to perfect something they didn't have the skills to do.
Yes. Yeah, I have heard that before, and I totally agree with it. I mean, like if you fuss over the same piece for hours, it's not the same thing as just making five of them. That sort of deal, for sure.
It really is a volume game. I
Hmm.
remember in my first ceramics class, my professor said, your first 1,000 pots are going to be bad. I remember feeling so discouraged, but also so like, well, fine. I'm going to make 1,001.
Yeah. No, I know. And they don't all feel bad, but when we look back on
Yeah.
them and we're like, yeah, they were bad. The first 1,000 were bad.
Man, I remember I was so proud of the things that now I look
Yeah.
back and I'm like,
Yeah. No, same. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's true for probably any artist.
Yes. Yeah.
It's early creations. Well, then I having a similar experience with TikTok being the thing that kind of like catapulted us into public awareness. I find that interesting that that came after like all of this period of creating for other artists and kind of doing the grind and then building up that confidence and personal work enough to when you started putting yourself out there, you found the channel that had the most access or the most reach and you used that to be able to launch into what you're doing today. Can you, I feel like there's so much ambiguity with new potters of figuring out how to use social media to work for them. Do you have any tips or tricks?
I think that a
Maybe not.
simple tip would be to watch a lot of content on social media and figure out what do you find entertaining? Like what reels do you stay and watch the whole thing? And don't necessarily just copy everything word for word, but you can use those as inspiration to be like, okay, this is a content creator who does really well. This is the style of content that they do. I can learn from that and then create my own like branch off of that sort of thing. So there are content creators who make longer form content and it performs well. And there are content creators who make shorter form content and that performs well. But there are different ways to do both. But being like you want to try to like content. I know the whole thing with artists is everyone hates content creation. But if you truly hate it, it comes off that people hate it. You know what I mean? Like it people
Yeah.
feel it. So you really want to try to like it. So try to figure out what you like to watch because that's something that I feel every time I post a reel is that if I don't have the urge to watch my own reel over and over again, it's not good enough to post it. Like I want to be entertained by my own content or else why would anybody else be entertained by it? So I think that that's a good place to start. Figure out what content you like and then figure out how you can kind of fit your own work into that. Uh,
I think that's a good tactic because you're right. If you don't like it, it's going to become so full of friction that you won't do it, or it will be clear that you don't like doing it in the videos you produce.
mhm.
Do you ever watch the reels that you make like over and over and over and over again because you like them so much?
Only occasionally. The ones that I really love are like if I can sync it up with music really nicely, like
Mm.
paint strokes to music, I will watch those ones over and over again because there's something about them that's just so satisfying. But anything that's longer or like if my voice is in it, I'm not rewatching it a bunch of times.
Yeah, there's something about hearing our own voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, talk to me about the style of work that you produce. I know if anybody's following you, I'm sure that they've seen how much pop culture and anime kind of feeds into the visual language that you want to communicate. Where did that come from? How does that connect with your craft life?
Yeah, so I think, It's such an interesting question of like the visual language and like why I've chosen anime and those sort of images. And I think that it's because there's so much emotion in that style of imagery that like pottery is an art form that can have very little voice. A lot of pottery does have a voice, but like not so much as like a painting is almost always going to have voice because it's entirely someone's interpretation of something, but a mug is a mug. So it can be kind of voiceless, that I like giving it a voice and I like giving it a loud voice. And I think that emotionally, the anime, manga, video game images do that, that there's something in that style that the emotions are exaggerated, the facial expressions are exaggerated. I like that aspect of it. And then I also think that there was an element of it that like it's challenging in a really fun way to combine like an ancient craft with such a modern, very recently super popular. It's always been popular, but the boom that happened in like 2020 with anime was just huge. And so combining this like really modern 2D art form with an ancient 3D craft and making it cohesive is again a really fun challenge. I've always kind of said that it's subtle, but I want people when they see my work to think she makes anime pottery and not she puts anime images on pots. They're like two different things in my mind. I want the final piece to look like one cohesive object that was like always meant to have that image on from the get-go sort of deal. That I think again that blend is really fun. And that's part of why my pots themselves are a little funky and different with like the carved bottoms and the feet is I think that it helps to bring the ancient 3D craft a little bit modern to kind of meld a little bit better with the anime images and such. But but yeah, I think that the emotions of it all are a big thing for me. I won't go far into it, but I'll say like I'm autistic and I think that emotions are like they have to be bold for me to quickly grasp them. And so I think that's another part of it of like I love these emotions that are like just really bold and I love being able to make that come across where people see my work and even if they don't know what the source material is, that they're like, wow, what I want to know what that's from. I want to watch it because that just looks so fascinating. What's happening? Like they're drawn into like a moment or an emotion or a feeling. I just think that that's so cool to be able to convey with just, again, a mug, like that it speaks for itself in a way.
It really does. And as somebody who's made pots for a long time and illustrated as well, I've kind of realized the power of like story and emotion when you tie it to an object. It's like by itself, a mug it could be well made, but yeah, it is a mug. And if you're trying to connect with an audience on a technical level of look how well crafted this mug is, it feels like there's more obstacles in place to communicate the quality of the technique versus it's so much easier to connect on like a story level or an emotional level. And for the people who understand the stories and have like watched the anime, these shows, a lot of times like there are so many episodes, so many books. And so you're so invested in these characters and stories. And if you can communicate like the payoff or like the most emotional moments of that character's journey, like onto a piece, it's like instantaneous. People are like, I've got to have that.
Right. Yeah.
There's that just like instant connection.
Yes. Yeah. No, connection is definitely part of it too, of that. Like it is a way to instantly form connections with people. There that, you also think of like shows that a lot of people haven't seen that people get so excited when they're like, oh, you made something from this show. Nobody ever makes anything from that show. It's like it makes people immediately also feel closer to the maker of like they know this show that I love and that is a connection. So there's definitely a lot to be said for it allowing us to like connect to the viewer with a story. Yeah.
Do you have a process for how you identify the moments you're going to put on a piece?
I think a lot of times there are moments that like I'll be watching and it happens and I'm like, "Oh, I want to put that on a mug." So it's just like it's just like a feeling. But a lot of times again, I like the really intense emotions, so a lot of times that ends up being like fight scenes or like emotional moments, but I also I'm really picky about composition and how stuff fits on a piece. So there's also a lot of things of like I like images that are somewhat zoomed in but not super zoomed in and like just those sorts of things that it's one of those aspects that I think some people might see my work and be like, she just puts images on her pots. So I'm like, I think about those images a lot before they go on the pots. But But yeah, mostly it's just a feeling that I go by. Like if the moment really stands out to me, I mean, kind of like you had mentioned too, of there's like the moments in the shows or the mangas where like the story reaches a climax and there's like a huge moment or there's a resolution or something like that, that those moments are great to pick from.
I think you're right. I've had similar experience where we've created from stories or scenes that were less impactful and then gathering audience feedback from those pots versus the ones like where you really hit the exact moment or like the exact message or time. Like you can
Hmm.
tell by
Hmm.
audience reaction of like, I did well.
Yeah, yeah.
What are the challenges of putting that level of detail and underglaze on your pots? Because I think the first time I saw your work, I assumed that they were decals or some kind of image transfer. And then I saw a video of you painting one. I was blown away because by itself, painting like with paints would be the challenge, but also you're combining it onto a medium that is inherently complicated and the colors change and interact with the glazes on top of them. So I'm really interested in like your workflow of how you accomplish that obstacle.
Yeah, so it is tricky. I would say that the biggest reason I'm able to do what I do is having made a lot of pots that didn't work out. And really, like, I always describe it as I really, really know my underglazes. I know them like the back of my hand. I know every little change that they do. And so I know like how they will behave in mixes and what they do with clear glaze and what they do without clear glaze and what they do by themselves and what they do layered and all of those things. That just took time. But, I've I don't want to sound salesy by bringing up the course already,
Please.
but to say that, that's one of the things that in the course I share my underglaze analysis, which is the document I created that basically is all of that stuff that I keep in my brain that I've learned about underglazes, I put on paper about the behavior of all these colors. And I haven't tried every color or every brand, but it's like the colors that I use. And I mean, I'm big on like learning how to mix them is way more beneficial than just buying every color out there in general. But yeah, so that's one of the things in the course is I share the colors and I talk about what you need to know about your underglazes. So when you do get a new color, you know what you need to get to know about it and all of those things. But anyway, not to get off track, but yeah, so I know my underglazes really well. I'm to the point now where I'm pretty confident in my color mixes. If I'm not so confident about something, which is still kind of the case with skin tones, I'm not afraid to throw a test mug in the kiln and get that out and see what that looks like. But for the most part, I probably do less testing than people think that I do. I'm just kind of, I don't know. I just go for it a lot. And I think there's something to be said for that, that I think fear holds you back. And I think just going for it a lot of times pays off. And if you think about like, I never get a piece out of the kiln and I think it's perfect, but nobody notices if one color is slightly off other than me. So like, I am slowly, every time I pull a new piece from the kiln, I'm like, okay, that mix could have been a little bit tweaked. And I log that in my head and I know the next time that I'll make it a little bit different, that sort of thing. And like I have only recently started using clear glaze. Up until very recently, I wasn't using it. I was just glazing around my designs. But so I'm still not always used to just how much clear glaze changes certain things. So it makes grays really, really dark. And I had a piece that I glazed in clear glaze that came out darker than I wanted it to, but nobody else really knew that it was darker than I wanted it to be because it still came across fine. And so again, it's this idea that I think it's easy to perceive work as being like, oh, she's perfect at what she does, and be like, there's there's no true perfection. But I think that not being afraid to just do it is a big thing. Like again, knowing that if you mix like 40 colors for a piece and a couple of them are off, the whole piece is still going to look awesome. Don't worry too much about like if you're going to mess up one color kind of thing. Just go for it. And then you can figure it out later. And if you want to remake it, you can remake it. But I feel like I went on a tangent there. There's so much I could say about underglazes. Anyway, just knowing them really well. And then, I mean, for me, I work on greenware and I prefer leather hard. I prefer to paint on leather hard greenware. I can paint on bone dry, but I don't love it. But that does allow me, if I wanted to start completely over, I could sponge it off. I don't typically do that, but that's also an element of I'm not so locked in as if I was working on bisqueware. But I keep cups on hand, like just random greenware that I use for swatching underglaze. And like I might swatch a color like 5 times and keep adding stuff to the mix before I have it exactly where I want it to be, which is helpful. Just it never looks the same in the container wet as it does dry on a piece.
Never.
There. But yeah.
I was gonna ask, what kind of underglazes are your favorites to use? Do you have a particular brand?
Yes, so I use Amico velvets, which are expensive, but I think that they're very reliable in that like I like, a lot of their colors, whereas I know a lot of artists who it's like, oh, I'll use the pink from this brand and the greens from this brand and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, my thing of that I want to know my underglazes really well, I try to avoid like jumping around a bunch or swapping and like I like to just I have a selection of colors and I'm very loyal. I stand by them. But yes, the Amico velvets. I love the finish that you get from them. That velvet finish, that like matte look is very nice. And I think that in general they behave really well. And
Do you ever die inside when you have to buy red?
yeah, I feel like I die inside when I buy any of them now. I can still remember in college when you could get a pint for like $12 and a pint is like $48 now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotten just truly crazy. As I'm very grateful that my work is slow and I just have small paintings because they last me a long time. Those artists who are using it to paint like entire cups and stuff, I'm like, that you gotta be going broke just on underglaze.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think people understand how expensive those colors can be.
Yeah, yeah,
The work is
they
into
are
them.
not cheap. Yeah, for sure.
Well, earlier, I don't think we were going too far off course when we were talking about your course, because I think part of the reason that I was interested in talking to you is this idea of online education and how that fits into the craft world. Before we get into that, I think what might lead us there is talking about like you mentioned, how all of the work that you put into understanding your glazes and the amount of technique that comes from being able to produce the work that you put into. Are there any lessons that you would have wished, like you in the beginning knew, that would have fast tracked you to where you are now? Not that there's a shortcut, but there are also lots of distractions that we don't know are distractions.
Right. Yeah, so definitely. I feel like it almost sounds silly, but I wish that I had understood just how much was possible with underglazes. I think that a lot of how underglazes are taught when you're like just first starting pottery is that like yeah, they're sort of like paints, but they're not really. So you can like paint the whole mug and then you can sgraffito it or you can like block in color and like, there's just basic they teach you very like basic standard things. There's not really a whole lot of like you can use them just like paints. They just change a little bit, which fundamentally like they do change a little bit, but that's that if you get to know them and you're not like shocked every time they change, it feels not so dramatic. So you're like if you're expecting it, it doesn't catch you off guard. You can anticipate what the changes are going to be and you can compensate for that ahead of time. So I wish I had understood like that it was possible to do the kind of work that I do because I was a painter. That was what I did before I started pottery. And I spent years where I did not put a single illustration or painting on my pot because I was just like, well, I don't think I can. And if I did, how would I glaze it? And like, it was just, I didn't know anybody who was making the kind of work that I make. And, I'm always hesitant to throw that out there. Like there totally could have been somebody who was painting like insane stuff and we haven't connected on social media, that sort of thing. At some point I did find and I thought about this beforehand and I wrote her name down because I really wanted to mention her. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but it's Brooke. And on Instagram, she's Bats Ceramics.
Write it down.
She makes some incredible underglaze paintings of animals. They're they look like they're done with like oil paints. I've been following her almost as long as I've done pottery, and I just remember thinking like she's just got to be a unique master because nobody else is doing this. And like I have no idea how she's making this possible because nobody else is using underglaze like that. Like using it as if it's just again oil paints or watercolors or something like that where it doesn't look like underglaze. It looks like she's doing something else. But so that was inspiration for me early on to be like, okay, it is possible, but I needed somebody to look at me and be like, just go for it. And that's part of what I say in my course is like, you really trust that the underglaze, it'll tell you if it doesn't like it and you can adjust afterwards, but you really need to just try whatever it is you're wanting to try with it. That expect some failure, but that would happen with any pottery. There's always going to be some failure, but that
Yeah.
basically everything I've tried to do with underglaze, you can do. You can make it look like watercolors, you can make it look like oils. There's something about it where it's like it's such an interesting medium that I think of I always think of sgraffito when I think of like the way that underglaze kind of is on pottery. A lot of people do sgraffito with it. But then that beyond that, it doesn't really have its own visual style, unlike all the other paints that I've listed that all have their own like visual style. That I think like mimicry is what's so possible with underglaze is you can make it look like these other styles. And that's what's so cool. You just kind of you have to like take a step back and learn some of those fundamental painting skills in order to use it that way. But that then it's totally possible. You just have to have some of that fundamental underglaze knowledge, like how and when to layer it, how much to layer it, how all the colors will change. And then to segue into the next thing that I wish I had learned sooner was how to glaze images like this. I think in college I was definitely taught like, oh, well, you could have something and you could put clear over it and then you could put a glaze around the clear, but you would have to like wax over the first glaze. And like I just remember thinking like, well, that sounds like a nightmare and it just sounds terrible and like it would take forever and like it will run all over the place. And so like why would I do that? That I didn't realize for a long time just how much control you could have over glazes. Like that if you are strategic enough, you can glaze right up to the edge of something and the glaze won't just run right over your image. Also, the idea that like a lot of people still think that you have to use clear on everything. You just don't. You don't have to, as long as it's on the outside of a form, you don't have to use clear. I was terrified of clear for years. I'm starting to get over that fear. I feel like that's another part of glazing is you just hear that clear is just going to ruin your underglaze. That's what I feel like everyone says. And a lot of clear will, but you have to use the right clear, which is zinc free by Amico, but or Mako. But yeah, I think that again it's like a weird thing where I wish I had just known what was possible. I wish I had had somebody just hold my hand and be like, again, just try it. That just because you don't see other people doing it doesn't actually mean it's not possible. There just might be people who aren't willing to take the time because I think that's another thing about my work is how slow it is. But it's like, yeah, nobody wants to spend as long as I do glazing a single mug, but maybe they do. And I think it is starting to become that where there's so much pottery that people are itching for something different. It feels like so much has been done that I think this idea now where we're going to start having more potters like me, where they make extremely small batches of things and like a high number of hours into every single piece because they're like very hand painted or, whatever that sort of deal is. Because again, there's so much pottery now that it's like I think people are really craving to see some more individuality again to kind of break out of the mold. Oh,
Pun
and then
intended.
yes, yeah, pun intended. And the last thing is a simple one of just I wish I had known about liquid latex and pottery
Mm,
sooner because I like it
game
so much
changer.
more than wax. Yeah. It is a game changer. I mean, I had somebody recently tell me that they use it a lot more overseas than we do in America. Interesting. No idea why. But they said that it was like taught right alongside wax in almost every studio they'd worked at. And I was like, cool, that's awesome. I never knew it was a thing in pottery until like the last couple of years. And I love like you can use it on greenware in a way that you can't use wax because the only way to get wax off is to bisque
Fire.
fire it again. Yeah. So I think it's very cool and very versatile and would have like saved me some headaches for how I did certain things if I had just known about it sooner.
It's so funny how something like one product can change so much of what you do. Because
Hmm.
I've been in the boat of trying to wax off an area and a drip runs, and I'm like, that ruins
Yes.
the entire thing. It just, latex
Yes.
is very nice. I have
Yeah.
to agree with you there. Well, for those of you, I mean, I guess anybody listening would have caught on to the fact now that you're producing a course specific around underglazes. And I think we were starting to see this, or at least I'm starting to see, I don't know if others are, this trend of like taking craft knowledge out of what was traditionally like university settings,
Hmm.
maybe some community studios, and then putting it into a place where people can learn in their own home studios. So one, I just wanted to say, I think this is a really interesting kind of like endeavor that you're on and where it lines up with how people are starting to learn in 2026. And so naturally, I just have like a inane curiosity about your process in all of this and how you're putting the course together. But as we go into, I guess, what is the core promise that you're trying to solve with your course that you hope will kind of fix some of these obstacles for people wanting to do what you're doing or similar techniques?
I think one of them that maybe seems super straightforward, but I think it is a big thing, is that like it to be able to do it at home and to not have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to travel somewhere, especially if it's something like what I do where there's not a lot of people who do it and it's very specified that I can't travel everywhere. I can't be everywhere. And again, it's this idea that I taught one in-person workshop last fall, and it was expensive for me. It was expensive for students, and we couldn't cover everything because you only have a few days. I can't stay somewhere for a week for us to fully work through greenware and then bisqueware and then glazeware. I just can't stay somewhere that long. It gives me the ability to make it fully comprehensive. Like the course has this one specifically, I've covered, everything from start to finish, not making the actual pots. I think there are better teachers at that than me, but surface decoration start to finish. And I was able to leave nothing out and go as in depth in everything as I wanted to. So it's just, again, it's super comprehensive. I think so overcoming that barrier of like it's not expensive. If people I'll say if people joined the wait list, it's less than $200. If they didn't join the wait list, it's a little less than $300. And I think that for almost 11 hours of content and
So
everything else that
much.
you get with the course, yeah. So I think that I really wanted it to be affordable. I wanted people to be able to, I wanted it to be accessible because I think that it should be. I know not everyone can, like everyone deserves to make a living. So if people can't make their stuff that cheap, I understand. I'm not talking bad about anybody who charges more, but I just think that that's an important aspect of it. And that I hope people leave the course largely like with confidence. That's a big thing for me because it ties into those things that I said I had wish I had learned sooner. That I hope that they leave being like, okay, any 2D image that I want to put on this piece, whether it's pets or landscapes, characters like me, I mean, just truly anything, that they feel like they have fundamental skills at that point to have like a jump off point that they're like, okay, I can dive into this now. And something else too is that they don't have to have a ton of drawing skills. Like you don't I teach my image transfer method, and so it makes it so that instead of feeling like you need to know how to fully draw and know how to make pottery and know how to paint and know how to glaze, there's like tricks that can get you around certain things a little bit where it's like if you can't fully, draw a perfect realistic cat, you don't need to know how to do that. If you want to do pet portraits, you just don't need to. So yeah, leaving with confidence and then leaving with a deeper understanding of underglaze than I think most people have. I think that in a way, trying to think how to describe this, underglaze is both more and less complicated than people think it is. I know that doesn't make any sense. It's very contradictory.
That makes sense.
But I think that, when the company's released, like, this is what it looks like at cone 0, 5, 5, and 10. If it's like, no, not really,
That's a
not
pipe dream.
always. Yeah, 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 yeah. That like you need to test it on your clay in your kiln and see how it behaves at your exact temperature. Because there's some that are dramatically different at cone 5 versus 6, like that sort of thing. So it's important to get to know specifically the colors that you want to use. And then again, I think it's marketed as a little too easy sometimes where they're like, it's just like paint. You can mix them just like paint. And it's like, not, there's nuances to the things. So me teaching you the nuances so that you leave feeling like you may not be a master at mixing them right away, but you have the information that you need to feel confident enough to start mixing them. And then I give you the tools that you need to like, what do you need to observe about it? What notes do you need to take? These sorts of things so that you can actually learn from your mistakes. I think there's something to be said for it's like if you're not paying enough attention to everything you're mixing and what's changing and what's not, that you're not always going to be learning from those failures, that you have to do strategic things to learn from your failures. So I teach that. I teach you what to observe about the changes that it goes through. Um,
This is going to be so valuable. But it's just thinking about like where I was and the information I wish I had as like even now, like for the information I don't. but as a new potter especially. I can tell from the way you're describing this that it's going to be a valuable asset to anybody who is interested in learning about underglazes.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I've been asked to make a course or to at least share my full process from start to finish for like more and more often as my presence on social media has grown. And I always struggled with like it was too much content to release just anywhere. I was like I would have had to put it on YouTube and I don't have a YouTube account. It's not I don't really I'm not savvy in that way. There's that balance between like I'm known for I'll answer any questions. I'll tell you any product. I still will, even with the course out. I'm still not gonna like if there's a something I talk about in the course, I'm not gonna be like, oh, that's in the you can find it in the course and not tell you. I will give you an answer and then I'll be like, if you want an hour of me talking about that thing, it's in the course kind of deal. But that balance of I wanted to create it. I didn't want people to feel like I was, putting it just behind a paywall, but that for the people who want that like super in-depth information that they can pay for it.
And I think being able to frame it in a way that is communicating the real value of it, because I think somebody who's wanting to mimic the techniques that you're putting on pots, I don't think they'd be able to find that level of information any other place without going to a million different areas and then trying to coalesce it. So,
Yes.
one, I think just the condensation of information
Hmm.
is super valuable. But also,
Yeah.
you're taking away somebody who wants to do this. Like you're removing years of I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that, I'm gonna try this, and
Hmm.
maybe a ton of failure. So you're kind of like creating the shortcut around all of the years of pursuing things that might not be to somebody's best interest, wanting to replicate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. The first thing you said and the second thing. So the first thing being like it's all condensed that I think that's a big part of it that sure some of the stuff you could find like on YouTube, but it's all going to be super scattered and just like to the wind to find every piece that you need to. And every artist does things a little bit different. So it's like one person might tell you this way and then another person tells you this way and you're like, I don't know which one to try. Obviously, you still may hear something different than I teach, but at least in mine it's just from start to finish. I'm not going to contradict myself. But yeah, so that, and then like you said, to streamline for people so that they can experience less failure than I did and just streamline their success of like I'm giving you what I know about underglaze and glaze so that you don't have to play around as much as I did, that you have again a really good starting point that if you want to add colors to your repertoire, you'll have to kind of start from zero, but I at least again I teach you how to do that more or less. But yeah, I agree. It will streamline it for people, and I'm happy that I'm going to be able to do that.
If somebody could tell me I could save 3 years of trying and failure for $300 or $200, yeah, easy.
Yeah,
I paid more than that for like one workshop, much
right.
less 11 hours of
Mhm.
detailed workshop. So
Mhm.
I think that's fantastic. I'm personally excited to, I'm on the wait list. I'm going to hop in that when it comes live.
Well,
So
thank
I'm
you.
excited.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a way that you approach being able to promise that people can walk away with confidence? Because there's more than just technique that goes into confidence. We talked earlier about the repetition that's required to be able to produce that skill that gains confidence. So do you have parts, and not to give everything away of what's inside, but do you have different areas of the class where you talk about like kind of mindset or like personal psychology and how to approach work that gains confidence in this area? Or is it more technical mastery leads to the confidence that students are after?
I would say both. I would say both. I have like a specific line work exercise that I have people try that's like just basically all a mind trick and it's just all about confidence. So I definitely have some stuff in there that's more just psychology related about how like you kind of have to trick your own brain. There's so much that like if you don't feel like you're confident enough to paint an amazing image, you won't try to, and therefore yeah, you never will. But if you try to paint something that you're like, I don't think I'm not at that skill level yet, try it anyway. It'll turn out better than you think it will. Like just I'm a big just go for it. Just it's gonna turn out better than you think it will. And if it's an absolute failure, then you'll still learn from it. But that there's no reason to not try it. So yeah, I definitely there's a mixture of both of those things. And I have some, exercises for people that they can like I tell them they can pick the image, but it's another line work exercise where I recommend that they choose an image that's not super simple, but not super detailed, and that they paint that same image as many times as they're willing to paint it until they're sick of it. But that that will ingrain the muscle memory of like basic brush control into your hands quicker than anything else will. It's way, way quicker than painting 10 of different images. And it might seem like, oh, I'm just training myself to paint this one image. No, you're learning muscle memory. It would be like if you were driving a car and you only drove it on the exact same route every day, but that was your experience driving. You'd still be learning how to drive a car. Just because it was the same route doesn't mean you know what I mean? So that sort of deal. So yeah, it's a mixture. They get technical lessons, and then I also do talk about just kind of the mindset of it. And I think that throughout it, my mindset in general is kind of portrayed just from how I teach and how I talk and everything that I say, that I think they'll leave it with this idea like me of just going for it. Just try it. But it's not going to hurt. It should be fun. If you're miserable, you're thinking about it too hard, really just go for it.
And at the end of the day, like the stakes are pretty low.
Uh-huh.
Maybe we lose a pot or two or a test
Yep.
tile, but
Yep. It's just mud.
it's just, yeah, just
It's
mud.
just mud. Yeah.
So confidence is huge. Are there any other barriers that keep new potters away from being able to produce underglaze paintings at the same level as you that are kind of covered in this course series?
I think like knowing where to start can be tricky. It just, I mean, you see a really detailed image and you're like, what do I even do first? Or like, should I focus on color mixing? Should I focus more on what the image is? Just, I don't know, that sort of thing. And I think that's why it could be nice that my course gives you the pieces of the puzzle that you need, but it also gives you the framework for at least like you wouldn't have to do everything the way that I do it, but I give you like my order of operations and like kind of I'll tell you if I think something is really important or if it's not that important. You'll kind of learn that as you go, sort of deal. And yeah, I think that that's part of it is it still relates a little bit to confidence where if you feel like you have this insurmountable task in front of you, like that you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, where do I begin?" Whereas I'm like, I'll show you. We got it. You don't have to think about step like 45 yet. We're on step 1. That's all good. Or if you do need to think about step 45, because sometimes you do, I'll tell you now is the time to think about step 45. Uh that I give you the framework for that. And then I think that, I mean, I think I'll be honest and say I don't think anybody else is teaching exactly what I'm teaching. And so I think that's something else is it's a barrier in and of itself of who else are you going to learn this from? I don't know anybody else who spends as many hours as I do painting my pots. Again, they could exist and we just don't know them. But I don't know anybody who is doing it. I tried yesterday on Instagram. I was scrolling through the list of artists that I follow and I was like, is there anyone I'm forgetting that it does like really insane underglaze paintings, except for, as I mentioned, Brooke from Bats Ceramics. But even she's fast. She doesn't spend as many hours as I do on mine. But so just getting such an expert in the field who also loves teaching. Like I love to teach. I love to talk about my process. So I think that comes through in the teaching. I think there's a lot of artists that they either like they're super passionate about the work or they're super passionate about teaching, but there's not always a big combination. And I think that the best teachers are the ones who are really passionate about it. So I think that it just that will benefit them that they're able to tell that like I'm excited about it and I like have got their back the whole way and that sort of thing. And yeah, that like if they want to make work like no one else is making, that's sort of what I was doing in the beginning. There's people now who are making similar work, and I'm not going to claim to be the very first one ever, but that I did that where I was like, okay, nobody's really making stuff like this. So I'm just going to go for it. And I hope that there are other people in the course who take it because they're like, I also want to make something on pottery that I don't see anybody else doing. And I want to be able to start that. And so to be able to learn it directly from somebody who did what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I admire the course that you're taking, producing a course. I do think that there's a lack of like masterful information from the people who have done the specific things that are available out
Mhm,
there. There's a lot of beginner info, but there's, I think, a true lack of that deep understanding that's being
mhm,
not being communicated in ways that it could be. Because I feel like the artists that are doing it or producing the quality of work that people want to be able to achieve are producing the work. And
mhm.
we all know that time is the most important thing that anybody has. And so the time spent to produce a course series a
Hmm.
lot of artists aren't willing to diverge from the production to then teach it.
Hmm.
And I'm curious why you decided to take that time, because it is a big time investment. I've produced a couple of online series before, and the amount of time that goes not into just the filming of the actual stuff, but the writing and the thinking about the process and being able to distill years of just, well, this is what I do into a step by step, this is why we do it framework is intense. So I'm just curious the motivation behind it and what you hope to achieve from it as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. So it definitely is a big time suck. I definitely had to put a ton of hours into it, more than I thought I would, which is true for everything in my life, where I'm like, it always takes me longer than I think it will.
Mhm.
But I really wanted to make it. That's like, again, I love talking about my process. I've always loved talking about my process on my Instagram stories. And for a long time, like, I had a process highlight. I still have some segments of it, but that it was like, man, this is going to be like, I'm going to have to make a total of like 25 story highlights in order to put all this information out here. And even then, it's going to be condensed. Like, there's just no way. So I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to create courses like this. I just didn't know how. And then it just like the universe, the timing was all perfect where I had just taught that in-person workshop in the fall and was like, wow, I love teaching. I forgot just how much I love teaching. And then I had a online education company reach out to me through another artist that I followed, and they gave me basically a business proposal where they explained that they handle all of the back end stuff. So like the website creation, the marketing strategies and plans. The list goes on, but it's essentially they held my hand for all of the professional business stuff, and all I had to focus on was the course creation, which was obviously still a lot, but the other stuff I wouldn't have even known really where to start with. And they also were able to help me with things like they gave me a framework for the like when I was starting to make the outline for the course. I'm a person who like I really thrive on examples. It's hard for me to just like visual make something from complete scratch. And so they were able to send me some outlines from other artists they worked with, and I was able to see like, okay, this is like approximately how many videos per module, how many modules, that sort of deal, and use all that information to make a course that I felt really confident about. But anyway, I got a little off on a tangent where I wanted to talk more about the business proposal aspect of it for any other potters listening who might ever be in this sort of situation. That again, I explained what they were going to be in charge of and what I was going to be in charge of. And then the agreement was that we would split profit 50-50. I'm sure that there are artists who would not want to split profit 50-50. They wouldn't want that split. For me, for how badly I wanted to produce this course, it was totally worth it. I don't want to make the website. I don't want to handle the wait list. I don't want to like, they have graphic designers that made all of the visuals for the ads, and like all I had to do was send them like pictures of me and they did everything else and just took a bunch off of my plate that would have absolutely made me not want to make the course. So it was totally worth it for me. And they have been a dream to work with, honestly. Like they promised me in the beginning that they would, because they were like, we're not ceramic artists. We don't know anything about the craft. So we'll take your word on it if you tell us like, hey, this isn't going to work, or hey, you need to write this differently, or any of that stuff. And they have stuck true to that, where anything that I've been like, hey, I don't like that, or hey, this needs to change, or I want to do it this way, they're 100% like, yeah, whatever you say. It's your course. You have control over it. No worries at all. So it's been really great. I was nervous in the beginning. I was very apprehensive of just, I don't know. Anytime somebody sells you a business prospect, you're kind of like, am I don't know. I just, because they
Am
want
I
you
being
to.
taken advantage of?
Yes. Yeah. And they want every company, they want you to say yes. And so, yeah, you're like, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? But I look back on it and I'm like so glad that I said yes. And it totally, for me, is going to be worth it. And I think that, again, I think as we've talked about with the course, I think it's really going to fill a void. So I'm like really happy that whatever method I used to get it off the ground, that I could make that happen. But yeah, I would say that that's why I've been able to do it, is because I've had this help from the other company. That was like the catalyst that was like, okay, I've been wanting to make this happen for a long time. This is gonna allow me to do it kind of thing.
That's really helpful because you're right. There is so much that goes into the production side of things and then the back end fulfillment side of things that are so different from the actual teaching.
Hmm.
It's two distinct skills and two distinct like buckets of work that need to be done.
Hmm.
And to do it all alone is daunting to say the least, because when it comes to those, even just like the sales funnels or marketing of things, like
Hmm.
there are nuances that somebody in that position can really come in and help artists who've never done it before know how to do it. And then I suppose if you ever want to do it again, you'll have a bit more of an understanding of how to produce it. And maybe you could do it on your own.
Hmm.
Or if it's worth it just to continue to have somebody else to be the producer,
Right.
I
Yeah.
can definitely see the value there.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, as I think one of the other like main topics of conversation that I was interested in talking to you about, and I hope our listeners will also be interested in hearing more about, is kind of how you utilize social media. I know we've touched on it at a few different points, but I feel like building up an audience and like almost like a ravenous collector base of people who are signing up for wait lists and looking forward to releases is something a lot of artists aspire to be able to achieve.
Hmm.
How would you encourage somebody who is in a relatively fresh starting place to start that process of developing a collector base, an audience, a following?
I think as far as starting the process, it's going to be different for everyone because everyone finds success a little bit differently. There's not like a, oh, this is how you go viral kind of thing. But I think that it's good advice to be genuine. I think that it's an important thing to remember that, in my opinion, on social media, they are just as much following like you and your brand as they are your artwork. So people follow accounts to be entertained. It's entertainment. And so if they find you yourself interesting, they're more likely to stick around than if they only find your art interesting. But there are artists who like their art is the only thing they share. So there are exceptions, but I think it's trickier that way. I think that more often than not, when you see the really successful accounts, there is a face that is associated with it, or if not a face, at least like somebody behind the camera who people associate with. Like I don't show my face a whole lot, but I think like I show my hands a lot. And I think my tattoos still like people probably think of like me in that way, but that still they want to know the person behind the work. I think that that's a thing with social media is like it's part of the reason they're buying from you is because they want to support you. They have to know who you are to want to support you. So being genuine. And then I think that producing good content is better than producing lots of content. So like buying good light. Like having stuff be well lit is the number one thing I'll say. It truly is the biggest difference as far as quality content. Like I didn't have like a nicer mic until like I don't know when I started making the course. But up until then I didn't bother with that. But have a good light, have like a workspace that, you know, it doesn't look insanely cluttered or messy and you like can film at it. And then just start experimenting with things. Again, I mentioned very early on today about like watch content, figure out what you like, and then start trying to make your own things and pay really close attention to what performs better. Like if you have a reel that does kind of well, look at everything about it. What audio did you use on it? How long was it? What happened in the first like 4 seconds of the reel? That's a big thing is like 4 seconds, the attention span of people. You have to
Oh, yeah.
get them in that amount of time somehow. You don't always have to be as direct as like using a hook, but it has to catch their attention in some way to stick around for the rest of the reel. I mean, I even think like even if you have a high follower count, your content can still perform badly. I think there's a misconception that like, oh, once you have a certain amount of followers, all your content's going to do well because you just have all these
Mm,
followers. And it's like,
no.
absolutely not. You can have a day where something will get like 4,000 views, even though I have 80,000 followers. And then I'm like, okay, that was my fault. You can't like, that's the big thing too, is getting out of this headspace of always wanting to be like, it's the algorithm of people didn't like the reel. It wasn't entertaining. And it's good to accept that because then you can change it. Whereas if you convince yourself that it's not your fault, you're just going to be like, well, I'm stuck. I better give up because I can't do anything about this. It's the algorithm. Content creation is a skill. I love the way that Kurt from Hambley Ceramics talks about content creation. Anything that he has ever said about it, I agree with 100%. And I think it's the way to think about it, which it's a skill just like anything else. You have to do it and try things to get better at it. and that you will get better at it. And it does get easier with time. You will start to figure out what works and what doesn't. But I think another tip I would give, and it's kind of because it's a pet peeve of mine, that when you're sharing your work, share like reels and videos and stuff, but also do post pictures still, because it's a pet peeve when I go to somebody's account and I'm like, but what's your finished work look like? I can't find a finished picture of anything that you make because it's all like thumbnails on videos of in between process stuff. So I think that's something else that Kurt says is like, post photos for followers really, and reels are for new people. I think that that's a great way to look at it, is assume that people who are watching your reels have no idea who you are and have never seen your work before. And then assume that people are seeing your pictures are like your followers who know what your stuff is. But yeah, I also think there's something to be said for like not giving up. Like content creation can feel like a slog if you're like nothing's working, and like it's just like every other thing where you're not going to immediately, or usually there are people who get lucky, but you're not going to immediately just like have success overnight because you started posting. You probably need to like make enough content that stuff is going to slowly perform better, and then you're going to figure out what kind of content works for you and what you like to make, and like all of that takes time. So have faith in it and try not to give up. I mean, I think of like back when I had my first boom of success, I had just had like a couple of failed sales. Like I had a Christmas sale with like over 50 items in it and I sold like 4 things. I had a Halloween drop that I sold like 2. That I was so close to becoming more successful than I ever thought I would be. But I was also so close to quitting because I was defeated, and it as artists, we know you have to be vulnerable every time you put your work out there. It's like putting a piece of yourself out there to be judged, and it hurts to be rejected and it's uncomfortable, but that you have to be okay to do that because your success could be right around the corner and you don't know it yet, and you won't know it unless you just keep posting or making the work.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. Is that I will say that social media nowadays, you're right, it's not about the follower count, and somebody with 100,000 followers, it can be just as seen as somebody who started yesterday, but they made just the good piece of content and
Hmm.
people liked it and resonated with it. It's interesting how the algorithms nowadays will almost like in like what you create is the variable of success, not necessarily how
Hmm.
many people are already in your network or watching you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's an encouragement, is that you don't
Hmm.
have to have a bajillion people with eyes on you all the time to be a successful, like have a good social
Yeah.
media presence. It's yeah, just starting, doing it small and learning what works and what you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know artists who have like 30,000 followers who sell out every time they have a sale. They make a great living. They are like where they want to be. And like it took them a long time to build up to that 30. It wasn't like they had one viral video or something. Usually, I'll say, like, when you see the accounts with really high numbers, it is like they've had a few videos that did super well and that brought in a ton of people, but we don't often retain all of those people as views. Like when my Instagram account was like at its peak, I think it was like 80,000 followers because I went through a phase where I lost some and I gained them back. I'm back at the same number now. But at my peak, I had like 11,000 story views on good days. So that goes to show you how many like eyes are actually on my account out of that 80. And then like now I'm still like doing pretty good numbers on reels and things, but I average like 1,000 views on my stories a day. But that you still think that's still a ton of people, 30,000 people, 15,000 people, or that's still a ton of people. Social media has just skewed our concept of these numbers so much that like it's crazy even to post a reel and be like 5,000 people saw that. That's a lot of people. We just have been kind of brainwashed to be like, oh, it was low views. But like, is it really though? Imagine being at a market where you had 5,000 people see your work. That's crazy.
That's a
I
lot.
Yeah. So I think that's something to remember too. And unless you're magic and somehow making 5,000 pots, you don't need 5,000 people. You need like a couple hundred really dedicated people who love your work. And then you're kind of set. Again, depending on how much work you're creating, but just that you really you just need a really small, really super dedicated fan base. And then the other numbers are just kind of fluff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because, I mean, especially with something that you're doing where you're spending so much time on like a single piece, a tactical question that I was interested to ask you is like, how do you approach like this? Because you only need a couple of hundred collectors like in your network.
hmm
How do you approach, with as many eyes as you have, the balancing like the scarcity of the object versus like the price point that you need to be able to like make back your costs and make a living? And then like how do you cultivate that with an audience of collectors who really appreciate it and will show up time and time again?
Yeah, so it's tricky. I won't claim that I have mastered it yet. I've kind of been in like a slog of working on customs in the last 2 years, which wasn't really intentional, but I bit off more than I could chew. Anyway, I'm hoping to get back into regular sales soon. And when I was having regular sales, I always tried to balance that I would have a range of prices in every sale. So I wouldn't just have the highest end of my range. I would make sure that I have like a couple of things that are on the low end, a couple that are in the middle, and a couple on the high end. And granted, it is worth mentioning that even the low end of my range is still considered pretty high for pottery, but that I think that I got very lucky where I'm in a very specific niche where I really price more like a painter and less like a potter, that they are pieces of pottery. Again, it's you think of more painter prices that I'm selling like originals. But anyway, trying to have that range of prices so that because I do have, a spectrum of collectors. I have collectors who are willing to buy on that low end, but not willing to buy on the high end. And then I have the smallest amount of collectors that are willing to buy that highest end. And I'll say too, I reserve my like absolute highest prices for custom work. So with drops, I usually don't include anything that's like that dramatic. I'll have like one mug that's like the highest selling of the batch kind of thing. And that's typically how I'll do it. And then something that I dabbled with a little bit previously, but I want to really lean into more in the future is at least once a year having a sale where I try to make like at least 20 of like a smaller, more simple object, just so that like I can get a little bit more of my work out there into people's hands and it will be on that low end range because I mean the scarcity is hard. It's like I can't keep raising prices. I don't want to keep raising prices, but also my stuff still sells out so fast that it's like I struggle with that. Like I want people to be able to own my work. I mean, as a potter, you want people to be able to hold your work and like have it. So it's something I've struggled with a lot emotionally as a chronic people pleaser is coming to terms with the fact that I will never be able to make enough work for everyone and that's okay. Because for a long time, it just would devastate me. Every sale, it felt like I had more people upset with me than were happy with me. But that it just is like art. It's just how it is. It's not a commodity. Everyone can't get it at the drop of a hat. It just is what it is. But yeah, not to I think maybe a little rambly there, but um yeah, trying to have that balance of prices. So I try to honor the people who want that lower end, the people who want the higher end. But yeah, a lot of it is still just like there's just going to be that scarcity. And I'm just very lucky that things like it's a good problem to have. I never want to sound too complainy of it's like my work sells so fast and my prices are so high. But that
My steak is too tender.
yeah. But you know, in the beginning I was just like treading water. I had no idea what I was doing. And now the point where at least I feel more confident now in my pricing. Like I'm used to people being like, "What's your average cost for something?" And then I respond and then they never say anything again. There's silence.
Yep.
It used to bother me. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm like, that's fine. I have my like really dedicated people and that's what I need. But if I had more dedicated people, I would be even more overwhelmed than I am
Mm.
currently. So I'm like, I'm fine with my little group of very loyal customers.
Do you like the process of being hands-on every piece? Or have you ever thought about an option that would, similar to painters, have prints? Have you ever thought about what that would be for you? Like, is it decals on like pre-made molded pieces, or is that a trajectory you want to stay away from?
I think I don't see myself ever making like slipped cast work, but I could absolutely see myself doing some variation of like screen printing with underglaze. I can see that of like me coming up with some designs that I could keep fairly simple and then making a lot of those. And yes, I can see that. I can see that in my future. I think that right now, because I've been so backlogged with customs for a long time, I can feel myself like I'm itching to just like make the work that I used to make again. So it's not something that I want to do immediately, but it's absolutely something that I think like 3 to 5 years that is on my radar to do for sure. And I think that like I also would love to have an apprentice one day. I think that would just be really cool. And envision that being the kind of work that they could also help me with.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I definitely like I would love for like I said earlier, for more people to be able to have my work, even if it's not necessarily all totally hand painted, that it's like a design that I've created and it's still a piece that I threw on the wheel and all of that kind of thing, I think would be a really cool option. And then I also want to get more into selling prints because I think that like with how long every piece takes me, it just makes sense that even if I don't sell a lot of prints, that anybody who it's like, okay, I made one of this mug and it will never be repeated. I would love to sell a few images of it so a few more people can at least kind of get something from the mug than just the one singular object that exists.
Would
So
you sell prints of the mug in the painting or just the painting?
I think I think I would have both options because I think I've like done polls on Instagram before, and some people want to be able to like see that it's on a mug, but then like I love it where I've zoomed in enough to where you can't see the mug around it, but you can at least tell from looking at it. Like you may not be able to tell like what material it is, but you're like it's not paper. I think that that's cool. I've always just liked the ability anyway to like zoom in super close on my work and see like all the details that when people are just on social media, scrolling past stuff so fast, don't really like catch those little details. But yeah, so I think both of the mug and just the image itself.
Well, Summer, I'm just all in all super excited to see the trajectory you're on. And I've really appreciated how you've communicated what you're up to and kind of like your thought process behind what you're producing and how you approach your work. That's been inspiring. And as a longtime admirer of your work, I'm just personally excited to see you thrive. Is there anything we haven't touched on that's coming out in the next couple of weeks, months that people can look forward to? I know we've got the course.
Mhm.
Anything else on the horizon or that we didn't touch on?
I don't think so. The course is the biggest thing. It actually launches this week, so it will be
Fantastic.
available very soon. Yeah. But that's the biggest thing. I'm super excited about it, and I'm really glad that we could talk about it. And I appreciate you having me on. But yeah, no, just the course. I do have other courses planned, and they will be coming this year. So we can also keep an eye on that. Some kind of more specific, like this course had to cover everything start to finish, but I have some more like diving into like very specific techniques of painting very specific things that I think people will be really interested in, depending on, what kind of work that they make or whatever. But I think that it'll be very fun. That I think this course will be the fundamental one, and then the other one will be like the optional little like add-ons kind of. But yeah, just keeping an eye for the future courses. But then yeah, this one launches this week.
What is the name of the course and has the waitlist closed yet? If not, where can people go to join before it does?
It's called Pottery in Modern Media, turning 2D concepts into 3D creations. And I believe that the waitlist closes today, so I probably won't be available after this is done, but it will stay open. Like generally the course will stay open for a few more days, and the waitlist may have one more day. I would have to check to be sure. So no matter what, where to find it will be on my Instagram. The link is in my bio. That's the most solid place. Yeah,
And we'll
that's
include it in the show notes, but could you say the
okay.
name of your Instagram handle?
Summers Ceramic Arts, and I believe that I think it's Summers Ceramics, and then there's an underscore, and then it's arts. Uh,
Fantastic. Well, again, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to come on today. I've been thrilled to have this conversation with you. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope anybody who listens after this will as well. I don't know if we'll be able to publish it in time for people to know to join the waitlist today. So if you're listening to this in advance, I apologize for that deadline cutting off. But I think anybody who wants to learn underglaze mastery, this would definitely be a resource for them. And so thank you for producing it.
yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Fantastic.